Hello everyone, today Biker with a Heart bring you a story full of humanity and compassion. We hope you enjoy listening.
The rain-slicked highway stretched like a black vein under the sodium glow of distant lamps, cutting through the indifferent sprawl of a forgotten industrial town. It was just past midnight when the roar of a single motorcycle shattered the quiet, a guttural thunder that echoed off rusted warehouses and empty lots. Ethan Ridge Harlan, a weathered veteran of the open road, had gripped the handlebars tighter, his leather jacket clinging like a second skin against the downpour. At 42, he carried the weight of too many miles, scars from a long-ago war in dusty foreign lands, the ghost of a brother lost to the same sands, and a faded tattoo on his forearm that read Iron Oath, a promise etched in ink after a battlefield vow to never leave a man behind. But tonight, the road had turned on him. A patch of oil, hidden in the storm's blur, sent his bike into a skid. Metal screamed against asphalt as he tumbled, the world inverting in a chaos of sparks and pain. He came to rest in a ditch, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle, blood mixing with the mud, the bike a mangled heap 20 feet away. No one stopped. Cars hissed past, their drivers averting eyes from the broken figure in the shadows. Sophia Reyes, a night shift nurse at Mercy General, had just clocked out after 12 hours of stitching wounds and whispering comforts to the dying. At 35, she was a quiet force in the ER's fluorescent haze, dark hair pulled into a practical bun, scrubs stained with the day's battles, her own burdens hidden beneath a steady gaze. Student loans from nursing school loomed like a storm cloud, 6 figures of debt chaining her to endless shifts, a reminder of the single mother who'd raised her alone after her father vanished into the bottle and the bottle's regrets. Driving home in her battered sedan, the wipers slapping rhythmically, she spotted the flicker of hazard lights through the rain. Most would have kept going. The news was full of stories about stranded strangers turning into traps. But Sophia pulled over, her heart tugging at the sight of the man slumped against the embankment, his face pale under the storm's assault. She grabbed her medical kit from the trunk, always kept there, a habit from years of responding to calls no one else would, and splashed through the puddles to his side. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her voice cut through the rain, calm but urgent, as she knelt beside him. Ethan's eyes fluttered open, glazed with shock, his breath ragged. "Don't move, I'm a nurse, help's coming." She assessed him quickly. Compound fracture in the tibia, possible concussion, ribs that protested with every shallow inhale. No phone signal in the valley, so she radioed for an ambulance from her car, then tore strips from her scarf to stabilize the leg. Her hands steady, despite the cold, seeping into her bones. Ethan gripped her arm weakly, his voice a gravel whisper. Don't call the cops. Club business." She nodded, understanding the code of the road warriors without judgment. She'd seen enough bikers roll into the ER, their loyalty as fierce as their wounds. The ambulance arrived in sirens and lights, paramedics taking over as she stepped back, soaked and shivering. At the hospital, she stayed on her shift's edge, slipping into the trauma bay to assist, her expertise turning the tide against infection and blood loss. When the billing clerk approached later, clipboard in hand, Sophia waved it off. No charge. He needed it. The clerk blinked. "But policy—" "Screw policy," she said softly, her eyes on the monitors beeping steady life. "Some debts aren't meant to be paid in dollars." Word spread like wildfire through the brotherhood. Ethan's club, the Iron Vipers, a tight-knit crew of 70 Hells Angels affiliates, bound by oaths forged in garages and graveyards, got the call at dawn. Their president, a grizzled giant named Marcus Bear Thorne, paced the clubhouse lot, the scent of coffee and engine oil thick in the air. Ethan had been their enforcer, the one who rode point-on runs from the desert badlands to coastal ports, upholding the code that had saved Bear's life in a skirmish years back. Now, lying in that sterile bed with pins in his leg and gratitude burning in his chest. Ethan made his vow. "She saved me, Bear. No questions, no bill. We owe her." Bear nodded, his face creased like old leather. "Iron oath holds. Find out everything." By noon, scouts had pieced it together. Sophia Reyes, address in a modest apartment complex, loans piling up from a for-profit med school that chewed up dreams and spat out bills. No family to lean on, just a quiet life of service in a city that ground down its helpers. The convoy assembled under a sky clearing to bruise purple, 70 bikes idling in a thunderous symphony outside the hospital. Chrome gleamed like promises kept, vests patched with the viper skull, engines purring with restrained power. Sophia emerged from her shift, exhaustion etching lines around her eyes, unaware of the sea of leather and steel waiting. Bear dismounted first, helmet underarm, his presence commanding yet deferential. "Ms. Reyes. Name's Bear. Ethan's grateful. More than that, we all are." She froze, the weight of their numbers pressing like a living wall, but no threat in their stance, only respect. He handed her an envelope, thick and official, stamped from a debt consolidation firm. Inside, paid in full, every cent of her loans, plus a buffer for the years ahead. "For the oath," Bear said simply. "You gave without asking. We return the same." Tears pricked her eyes, not from fear, but from the raw humanity in their gesture, a family chosen in the fire of the road, repaying kindness with unyielding loyalty. As the engines roared to life, fading into the horizon, Sophia stood there, the envelope clutched like a lifeline. In that moment, the weight lifted, not just financial, but the deeper burden of a world that tallied every good deed. Ethan's recovery would be long, marked by therapy sessions in sunlit rooms and late-night talks with his brothers about promises that bridged the gaps between strangers. But this was only the beginning. Whispers of corruption in the hospital's administration, overbilling the vulnerable, cutting corners on care, had already reached Bear's ears. Sophia's act had ignited something larger, a call to justice that would test oaths old and new. The road ahead twisted with moral shadows, where loyalty clashed with institutional greed, and one nurse's compassion became the spark for a brotherhood's redemption. For in the Iron Viper's world, a debt unpaid was a promise broken, and they rode for honor no matter the cost. The sun dipped low over the jagged skyline of the city, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement of Sophia's apartment parking lot. She sat on the worn steps of her building, the envelope still warm in her hands, its edges crinkling under her fingers like a secret too heavy to hold alone. The air carried the faint tang of exhaust from passing trucks and the earthy scent of rain-soaked concrete, a reminder that the storm had passed but left its mark. At 35, Sophia had learned to guard her heart against miracles. Life in the ER had shown her too many false hopes flickering out under harsh lights. Yet here it was, undeniable. Her student loans, the chain that had bound her for a decade, severed in a single gesture from strangers on steel horses. She traced the stamped seal on the documents, her mind replaying the rumble of those engines, the sea of weathered faces nodding in quiet solidarity. It wasn't just money, it was recognition, a nod to the quiet battles she fought every shift. Inside her one-bedroom unit, the walls echoed with the hum of a refrigerator that wheezed like an old patient, and the single bulb in the kitchen cast a yellow glow over stacks of unpaid bills, now rendered obsolete. Sophia poured herself a mug of chamomile tea, the steam rising in lazy curls, and sank into the sagging couch. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text from her shift supervisor, Elena, a no-nonsense woman with laugh lines earned from years of holding the line. Heard about the bikers. You okay? Admin's buzzing. Sophia's thumb hovered, then typed back, "Fine. Just unexpected. She didn't mention the relief flooding her veins, the way it loosened the knot in her chest that had tightened since nursing school, when dreams of helping the underserved clashed with the reality of endless debt. Her mother, long gone to a quieter life in a small town, had always said kindness circled back, but Sophia had stopped believing that after too many patients thanked her with empty promises. Across town, in the dim confines of the Iron Vipers clubhouse, a converted warehouse on the edge of the industrial district, the air was thick with the aroma of black coffee and motor oil, mingled with the faint smoke from a dying cigar. Ethan Harlan lay propped on a makeshift bed in the back room, his leg elevated on pillows stained with faint traces of road grit. The pain meds dulled the throb in his tibia, but not the fire in his gut. At 42, he'd stared down worse, ambushes in sun-baked valleys where the air tasted of sand and fear, the kind that etched iron oath into his skin after pulling his brother from a collapsing outpost. That brother hadn't made it home, but the promise lingered. A compass for the Vipers. Now it pulled him toward this nurse, Sophia, whose steady hands had bridged the gap between ditch and dawn. Bearthorn loomed in the doorway, his massive frame filling the space like a sentinel, arms crossed over a vest patched with the club's emblem, a coiled serpent around an unbreakable chain. "Scouts came back," he rumbled, voice low as gravel under tires. "Hospitals rotten from the top, overcharging the uninsured, skimping on supplies to pad exec pockets. Your girl's caught in the crossfire. Works doubles to make ends meet, even after what she did for you." Ethan's jaw tightened, his fingers drumming the bedsheet. He'd overheard whispers in the ER, nurses muttering about audits that never happened, patients turned away while administrators drove sleek cars to board meetings. "She didn't ask for our help, Bear, but if they're squeezing her kind..." Bear nodded, eyes narrowing like storm clouds. "Oath says we protect our own. She's one of us now, whether she knows it or not." The next morning broke with a crisp edge, the kind that sharpened the world into focus. Sophia arrived at Mercy General under a sky streaked with pale blue, her scrubs crisp despite the fatigue clinging to her like morning mist. The ER buzzed with its usual chaos, beeping monitors, the sharp cry of a child with a fever, the hurried clip of shoes on linoleum. She clocked in, nodding to colleagues who shot her curious glances, the story of the bikers already weaving through shift-change gossip like smoke. In the break room, Elena cornered her by the coffee machine, its drip a steady counterpoint to the tension. "Admin's on edge. That stunt with the loans? They're calling it external interference. Watch your back, Soph." Sophia forced a smile, stirring sugar into her cup. "It's done. Let it go." But as she moved to her station, a file on the desk caught her eye. A patient's chart from last week, marked for discharge, despite lingering signs of instability. The billing code inflated to squeeze insurance dry. She'd flagged it before quietly, but nothing changed. The system chewed on the vulnerable, and she was just one set of hands. By midday, the weight of it pressed heavier. During a rare lull, Sophia stepped out to the loading dock, the sun warming the concrete as trucks backed in with fresh supplies, fewer than last month, she noted, boxes lighter on essentials. Her phone vibrated again, this time an unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Ms. Reyes, Ethan Harlan," from the road. His voice was rough but warm, carrying the echo of pain managed. "Wanted to thank you proper, and ask if you're free to talk. Coffee, maybe. There's more to this than loans." She hesitated, the dock's breeze tugging at her hair, carrying the distant hum of traffic. Strangers didn't call with gratitude like this, not without strings. But something in his tone, the raw honesty of a man who'd stared down the abyss, tugged at her. "Tomorrow," she said finally. "Neutral ground." As evening fell, the Vipers gathered in the clubhouse lot, Bikes lined up like soldiers at attention, chrome catching the last rays in fiery glints. Bear addressed them under the flickering neon sign, his words cutting through the cooling air. "We ride for the oath, brothers, but this runs deeper. Corruption poisoning the hands that heal. Sophia's the key. Her word carries weight inside those walls." Murmurs rippled, engines coughing to life in agreement. Ethan watched from the window, his resolve hardening like steel in a forge. The road had given him a second chance through her, and now it demanded he return it, not with fists, but with the unyielding truth of loyalty. Whispers of a larger storm brewed, hospital execs with ties to shady suppliers, patients lost to corners cut for profit. Sophia's compassion had cracked the facade, and the vipers would ride into the shadows to expose it, one promise at a time. In her apartment that night, Sophia lay awake, the envelope on her nightstand a beacon in the dark. The city's distant sirens wailed like warnings, but for the first time in years she felt the stir of alliance, a chosen thread weaving through the isolation. The oath she'd unknowingly invoked was binding them all, pulling disparate lives toward a reckoning where honor faced down greed, and quiet acts echoed louder than thunder. The morning sun filtered through the grimy blinds of the corner diner, casting striped shadows across checkered tabletops worn smooth by decades of hurried meals. The air hummed with the sizzle of bacon on the grill and the clink of porcelain mugs, undercut by the low murmur of truckers nursing coffee after long hauls. Sophia Reyes arrived early, her nurse's clogs whispering against the linoleum as she slid into a booth by the window, the vinyl seat cool against her jeans. At 35, she'd traded scrubs for civilian clothes, a simple blouse and cardigan that couldn't quite hide the tension in her shoulders. The envelope from the vipers sat tucked in her purse, a talisman of the impossible, but doubt gnawed at her like the chill seeping through the drafty pain. Why meet a biker she'd barely saved? Gratitude, he'd said, but her ER instincts whispered caution. Strangers with favors often came with hidden edges. Ethan Harlan pulled up outside on a borrowed cruiser, the engine's low growl fading to a purr as he killed it and swung his good leg over the seat. Crutches waited in the sidecar, a temporary crutch for the man who'd once run marathons on desert trails. At 42, the crash had stripped him bare, bruises blooming like storm clouds under his flannel shirt, his Iron Oath tattoo peeking from the cuff like a vow renewed. He spotted her through the glass, her dark hair catching the light, and a quiet respect settled in his chest. She'd pulled him from the rain-slick ditch without flinching, her hands a lifeline in the chaos. Limping through the door, the bell tinkling overhead, he nodded to the waitress and made his way to the booth, easing down opposite her with a wince that he masked with a half-smile. "Thanks for coming," he said, voice rough as gravel but steady, like the rumble of tires on open highway. The waitress set down 2 mugs of black coffee, steam curling up in fragrant wisps, and Sophia wrapped her hands around hers, the warmth grounding her. "Ethan, right? You look better than last night." He chuckled, a low sound that didn't reach his eyes. "Pins and prayers, but that's not why I asked you here. Bear, our president, told me what you did. No bill, no strings. In our world, that's rare as a straight road through the Badlands." She stirred her coffee, the spoon clinking softly, avoiding his gaze. "I see enough people get ground down by the system. Figured one less debt couldn't hurt." But her words hung heavy. The hospital's underbelly had been festering, and this biker's eyes held the weight of someone who'd seen his own shadows. They talked in fits and starts, the diner's hum providing cover, the scrape of forks, the distant honk of semis on the interstate. Ethan shared fragments of his life. The war that scarred him deeper than shrapnel, the brother lost to an IED's whisper, the vipers as the family that filled the void. "We ride for oaths, Ms. Reyes, promises that outlast the miles." Sophia listened, her guard cracking like frost under sun. She spoke of her own ghosts, a father who faded into regret, a mother who'd scraped by on hope, the nursing degree that promised healing but delivered chains of interest rates. It's not just the loans, the hospital. It's bleeding people dry, patients without insurance charged for air, supplies short, corners cut. Her voice dropped, edged with the frustration of 1,000 unsigned reports. Ethan's fingers tightened on his mug, the ceramic warm against calluses earned from wrenching engines in midnight garages. By the time their plates arrived, eggs sunny side up, toast buttered thick, the conversation had shifted, a current pulling them toward the storm. Ethan leaned in, his crutches propped against the booth like silent sentinels. "We dug a little, after what you did for me. Mercy General's execs aren't saints. Ties to suppliers who ship half-empty crates, billing codes padded like saddlebags. One nurse, Elena, your friend. She's been whispering about audits that vanish like smoke. Sophia's fork paused mid-air, yolk dripping like unspoken fears. She'd seen the signs, a patient's chart altered overnight, a colleague's warning glance during rounds. It's bigger than whispers. Last month, a kid came in with signs of neglect. Family couldn't afford follow-ups. Discharged too soon. No graphic horrors, just the quiet erosion of trust, the way greed hollowed out the halls meant for mercy. Ethan's eyes met hers, steady as a horizon line. The Vipers don't forget. You saved one of ours. Now we're asking if you'll stand with us. Not with guns or noise, just truth. Bear's got contacts, ways to shine light on the rot without the blowback hitting you." She searched his face, the lines etched by sun and sorrow, and felt the pull of that oath he'd inked into his skin. It wasn't about leather vests or roaring engines. It was the echo of her mother's words, kindness circling back, amplified by brothers bound by more than blood. "I can't promise anything," she said finally, but her voice lacked conviction, the coffee cooling as resolve warmed within. "But if it's about protecting the ones who come through those doors..." "Yeah. Tell me more." Outside, the sun climbed higher, baking the asphalt into shimmering waves, the diner's neon sign buzzing faintly like a heartbeat. Ethan paid the bill with a nod, no fanfare, and they stepped into the light, the air thick with the scent of diesel and blooming asphalt weeds. He offered her a ride back, neutral, he assured, but she waved it off, her sedan waiting like an old ally. As she drove away, the rear-view mirror caught the glint of his crutch against the curb, a man piecing himself together. Back at the clubhouse, Ethan relayed it all to Bear, the warehouse's rafters creaking under the weight of gathering dusk. She's in, or close, but the hospital's walls are thick. Execs like Harlan Crow, the CEO, he's got lawyers thicker than fog. Bear paced, his boots thudding like distant thunder, the scent of polished chrome from lined-up bikes drifting in. Then we peel it back slow. Scouts on payrolls, eyes on shipments. No rush. Oaths don't break under haste. That evening, Sophia returned to her shift at Mercy General, the ER's fluorescent buzz greeting her like an old adversary. Monitors beeped in rhythmic pleas, the air laced with antiseptic and urgency. Eleanor pulled her aside in the supply closet, shelves half-stocked with dwindling bandages, the door clicking shut behind them. "That biker call you?" Word spreading, admins sniffing around your loan's payoff like dogs on a scent. Sophia's pulse quickened, but she met her friend's gaze. "It's nothing, just gratitude." Eleanor's eyes narrowed, wise to the undercurrents. "Be careful. Crow's type doesn't like loose ends." As the shift wore on, Sophia moved through the chaos with renewed fire, stabilizing a worker's crushed hand from a factory mishap, her touch gentle amid the beeps and shouts. But in quiet moments, Ethan's words lingered, a bridge from isolation to alliance. Across the city, the Viper's lot thrummed with preparation, engines idling in the twilight, headlights piercing the gathering dark like stars aligning. Bear gathered a core group, 10 riders, shadows in leather, their faces maps of loyalty tested. "We ride for the oath, and for her," he said, voice carrying over the purr. Ethan nodded from the sidelines, his leg a dull ache, but his spirit revved higher. The corruption's web stretched, shady deals in boardrooms, patients pawned for profit. But one nurse's stand had ignited the fray. Whispers turned to plans, quiet actions brewing like storm clouds on the edge of the Badlands. Sophia, unknowingly, had become the heart of it, her compassion the spark that would test bonds forged in fire, pulling the brotherhood toward a justice as unyielding as the road itself. The night deepened, engines ready, promises whispering through the wind. The twilight haze hung heavy over Mercy General's sprawling campus, the emergency room's glass doors reflecting the dying embers of the sun like fractured promises. Sophia Reyes pushed through them after her shift, the weight of the day clinging to her scrubs, the faint scent of iodine and sweat, the echo of a young mother's grateful sob after stabilizing her feverish toddler. At 35, she'd mastered the rhythm of exhaustion, but tonight it pulsed differently, laced with the undercurrent of Ethan's words from the diner. The parking lot stretched empty, under sodium lamps buzzing like distant swarms. Her sedan, a lone sentinel amid the shadows. She unlocked the door, sliding into the seat with a sigh, the vinyl creaking under her. Keys turned, engine coughing to life, but as she pulled out, headlights pierced the rear view, a black SUV, sleek and anonymous, tailing at a measured distance. Her grip tightened on the wheel, heart quickening to the beat of unspoken warnings. Elena's caution echoed, "Crow's type doesn't like loose ends." Across the divide of cracked interstate, the Iron Viper's clubhouse pulsed with restrained energy, the warehouse's corrugated walls vibrating faintly from the low thrum of idling engines in the lot. Ethan Harlan sat at a scarred wooden table in the main hall, blueprints of Mercy General spread before him like a battlefield map. Faded photocopies from public records, annotated with scribbled notes on delivery routes and staff schedules. His leg throbbed under the table, a persistent reminder of the skid that had upended his world, but the pain sharpened his focus, turning it into fuel. At 42, he'd learned to channel scars into strategy, the iron oath tattoo on his forearm itching like a call to arms. Bearthorn loomed nearby, poring over a laptop screen hacked into municipal vendor logs, his massive hands dwarfing the keys. The air carried the rich bitterness of fresh brewed coffee mingled with the metallic tang of gun oil, though no weapons tonight, just the quiet tools of truth, hidden cameras, anonymous tips, alliances forged in whispers. "She spooked," Ethan said, voice low as he traced a route on the map, the pencil scratching like gravel under boots. Bear grunted, eyes narrowing at a line item, overpriced shipments from a shell company tied to the CEO's brother-in-law. Crows circling. Our payoff on her loans hit too close. He's sniffing for leverage. The Vipers had peeled back layers already, audits buried in digital graves, patients' bills inflated like storm swells, supplies diverted to black market flips. One scout, a wiry vet named Jax, had tailed a truck last week, capturing footage of crates unloaded half-empty into the hospital's bays, while executives toasted at a waterfront gala. No blood, no raids, just the cold math of greed eroding lives, one denied bandage at a time. Ethan's jaw set, memories of his brother's last hours in an understaffed VA ward, flashing unbidden, promises of care dissolving into bureaucracy's fog. Sophia's apartment building rose like a weary guardian at the city's frayed edge, its brick facade scarred by years of neglect, windows glowing sporadically against the encroaching night. She parked in her slot, scanning the lot, no SUV in sight, but the chill lingered, prickling her skin as she climbed the stairs, keys jingling like nervous laughter. Inside, the space felt smaller, the single lamp casting long shadows over the kitchen counter where the envelope from the Vipers still rested, its edges softened from handling. She brewed tea, the kettle's whistle piercing the quiet, steam rising in ethereal veils that blurred the window's view of sodium-lit streets. Her phone lit up. Elena again. SUV followed you home. Call security. And that biker, if he's pulling you in, bail. Sophia's thumb hovered, then replied, "It's not like that, just watching." She sank onto the couch, the springs sighing, and let her mind replay the diner's exchange, Ethan's steady gaze, the way his story wove personal loss with unbreakable bonds. For the first time, the hospital's rot felt less like an inevitable tide and more like a dam ready to crack. By midnight, the Vipers moved like ghosts through the industrial sprawl, a small team on unmarked vans slipping toward the hospital's perimeter fence. Jax led, his camera rig slung low, capturing the nocturnal ballet of deliveries. A lone truck rumbling in under the cover of stars, guards averting eyes for folded bills. Ethan monitored from the clubhouse via earpiece, the static crackle syncing with his pulse. "Clear on the East Bay," Jax whispered, lens zooming on a manifest. Antibiotics listed but boxes sealed with generic tape, contents rerouted for profit. Bear paced behind Ethan, the floorboards creaking under his weight, the scent of his cigar, a rare indulgence, wafting like a signal fire. This ties to Crow direct, offshore accounts, laundered through fake charities. The oath burned in Ethan's chest, not vengeance but vindication. The Brotherhood's code, demanding they shield the healers from the wolves in suits. Sophia's face flickered in his thoughts, her hands steady in the rain, now potentially in the crosshairs. Dawn crept in with a pale wash over the city, painting the hospital's towers in reluctant gold. Sophia arrived for her shift, the ER already stirring with the night's aftermath. A construction worker with signs of overexertion, his chart flagged for premature release to cut costs. She moved through triage, her steps measured, but Eleanor pulled her into the locker room, the door latching with the definitive click. "Found this in your pigeonhole." She handed over a sealed note, typed and anonymous. "Stay out of matters beyond your pay grade. Debts have a way of resurfacing." Sophia's blood ran cool, crumpling the paper, the ink smudging like veiled threats. "Crow," Elena muttered, glancing at the door. "He's purging files, anyone who's complained." In that moment, isolation fractured. Sophia texted Ethan, "Need to talk. Now." The response came swift. Coordinates to a neutral park on the city's green fringe, where oaks whispered in the breeze and benches overlooked a lazy river glinting under the rising sun. Ethan arrived first, crutches discarded for a cane. His limp, less pronounced as resolve, straightened his spine. Sophia pulled up minutes later, her sedan crunching gravel, eyes shadowed but fierce. They walked the path, the air fresh with dew-kissed grass and distant pine, her voice breaking the birdsong. "They're warning me off. The loans, the bikers." It stirred the hive. Ethan nodded, the cane tapping rhythm like a metronome of solidarity. "We have proof. Shipments shorted, bills falsified. Not to bury them, just expose, let the light do the work." She stopped by the water's edge, ripples lapping like hesitant confessions, and met his gaze. "I've seen patients suffer for their games. If this oath of yours means ending it..." Her words trailed, but the alliance solidified, a bridge of trust spanning their worlds. Back at the clubhouse, Bear integrated the new intel, the hall filling with the murmur of riders. 70 strong, though only a core few in the know. Their vests hung like banners of quiet defiance. Engines warmed in the lot, not for a roar but a subtle patrol, eyes on the hospital's shadows. Ethan watched Sophia drive away from the park, her taillights fading into the morning traffic, a spark of redemption igniting in the Brotherhood's core. The corruption's tendrils reached deeper, executives plotting in glass offices, unaware of the oath uncoiling like a serpent, ready to strike with truth. Sophia's stand had woven her into their fabric, a chosen sister in leather and steel, pulling them toward a moral horizon where loyalty outshone greed's gleam. As the sun climbed, Mercy General's halls buzzed with oblivious routine, but undercurrents stirred, whispers among nurses, a file misplaced, the first crack in the facade. The vipers rode on the periphery, promises whispering through the wind, binding fates in a tapestry of honor and unyielding light. If this tale of quiet courage and unbreakable bonds has touched your heart, please hit that like button below. It helps spread these stories of redemption far and wide. The midday sun beat down on the cracked sidewalks of the city's forgotten quarter, where Mercy General's shadow loomed like a false sentinel over chain-link fences and boarded-up storefronts. Sophia Reyes navigated the ER's controlled chaos with a vigilance sharpened by the anonymous note's chill, her scrubs whispering against her skin as she checked vitals on an elderly patient wheezing from untreated asthma. Another chart she'd flagged for extended observation, only to see it stamped for discharge by an admin override. At 35, the weight of her choices pressed like the humid air, thick with the scent of bleach and unwashed worry. Elena's warnings echoed in her ears during handoffs, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a swarm of doubts. But the park meeting with Ethan had planted a seed of defiance, his steady words about the Viper's proof rooting deeper than fear. She slipped her phone into her pocket after a quick text, holding steady any movement. His reply vibrated almost instantly. Eyes on the shipments. Stay sharp. Miles away, in the Iron Viper's clubhouse, the air hung heavy with the aroma of cooling engines and stale takeout, the warehouse's high ceilings amplifying the low murmur of strategy. Ethan Harlan leaned against a workbench, his cane propped nearby, the wood scarred from years of wrench repairs that mirrored his own mending fractures. At 42, the throb in his leg was a distant hum now, overshadowed by the fire of purpose, reignited by Sophia's alliance. Blueprints and printouts cluttered the table, vendor invoices cross-referenced with hospital logs, timestamps from Jax's nocturnal stakeouts highlighting discrepancies that screamed foul play. Bearthorn stood at the head, his broad shoulders casting a shadow over the gathered core. 10 riders, faces etched with the quiet resolve of men who'd traded battlefield chaos for road-bound oaths. The iron oath emblem on their vests caught the light filtering through grimy windows, a symbol of bonds that no boardroom greed could sever. "Intel's solid," Bear rumbled, tapping a circled entry on a manifest. Antiseptics billed at double rate, but delivered in half measures, funneled through a shell firm linked to CEO Harlan Crow's extended family. No overt violence marred the evidence, just the insidious drip of corruption. Patients denied meds while executives padded bonuses, audits suppressed like whispers in the wind. Ethan's fingers traced the lines, his mind flashing to Sophia's diner confession, the way her eyes had hardened over tales of premature discharges leaving families adrift. "She risks her job for this," he said, voice steady as a throttled engine. "We deliver clean, anonymous drop to the right ears, state oversight, not street justice." Bear nodded, the motion deliberate, his cigar smoke curling like a vow sealed in haze. The Brotherhood had scouted deeper that morning. A whistleblower contact in the health department, a former nurse who'd quit under similar pressures, ready to amplify their findings without fingerprints. Sophia emerged from the hospital into the late afternoon glare, the parking lot's asphalt radiating heat that warped the air like mirages of escape. Her sedan waited, but she paused by the employee entrance, scanning for the black SUV that had haunted her drive home. Nothing but the distant wail of an ambulance slicing the haze, its siren a reminder of the lives teetering on the edge of the system's blade. She slid behind the wheel, the engine's familiar rattle grounding her as she merged into traffic, the city's sprawl unfolding in a blur of taillights and billboards promising cures that never came. Her phone buzzed. Elena. Crows in a meeting. Cleaning house. Watch your shifts. Sophia's jaw tightened, the road ahead curving toward her apartment like a path to confrontation. The Viper's gesture with the loans had been a lifeline, but this alliance pulled her into deeper waters, where her quiet compassion clashed with institutional shadows. By dusk, the Vipers mobilized with the precision of a well-tuned ride, unmarked vans gliding through back alleys toward a nondescript storage unit on the industrial fringe. Jax unloaded the compiled dossier, digital files on encrypted drives, printed stacks bound in plain folders, each page a testament to eroded trust, falsified records suggesting overlooked signs of patient distress, supply chains siphoned for profit while corners were cut on care. Ethan oversaw the packaging, his hands steady despite the ache flaring in his limb, the scent of fresh ink mingling with the faint oil on his skin. "This goes to the state AG's office by morning," Bear instructed, sealing the last envelope with a decisive slap. "No names, no trails back to her or us. Oath protects the innocent." The group dispersed into the twilight, engines humming softly to avoid drawing eyes, their loyalty a silent engine driving the mission. Ethan lingered, staring at the city lights twinkling like distant campfires, thoughts drifting to the nurse who'd bridged their worlds. Her stand echoed his brother's last words in that desert outpost. "Hold the line." Night fell over Sophia's apartment like a heavy curtain, the building's hallway lights flickering as she unlocked her door, the key's scrape echoing her unease. Inside, the space felt fortified, yet fragile. The kitchen light spilling warmth over the counter where she'd left a half-eaten sandwich from lunch. She brewed coffee, the pot gurgling like a confidant, and sank into the armchair by the window, overlooking the lot where shadows pooled under lampposts. The note's threat replayed in her mind. Debts have a way of resurfacing. But Ethan's park promise countered it. Exposure through truth, not retaliation. Her phone lit up with his call, the ring cutting the quiet. "It's done," he said without preamble, his voice carrying the road's gravel edge. "Package en route, proof of the shorted supplies, padded bills, everything tied to Crow." Relief washed over her, mingled with a surge of resolve, the coffee's bitterness sharpening her focus. "And me? They can't trace it?" "Clean as a new chain," he assured. "You're not alone in this anymore." Across the divide, in a dimly lit office atop Mercy General's administrative tower, Arlen Crow paced before floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering sprawl. At 58, his suit hung impeccably, but tension etched his features like cracks in polished marble, the air conditioned to a sterile chill, scented with expensive cologne. Reports littered his desk, anomalies in billing, murmurs from the nursing staff about external inquiries. The biker payoff on Reyes's loans flagged as suspicious. He'd built his empire on calculated risks, diverting funds to offshore havens, pressuring suppliers for kickbacks. But this nurse's entanglement with the Vipers threatened the facade. "Find leverage!" he barked into his phone, voice clipped as he watched headlights snake below. Her history, anything. We shut this down quiet. Unbeknownst to him, the web was unraveling, threads pulled by oaths older than his ledgers. Sophia stepped onto her balcony, the night air cool against her face, carrying the faint rumble of distant traffic like a heartbeat syncing with her own. Stars pierced the urban haze, faint promises of clarity amid the murk. Ethan's words lingered, binding her to the Viper's fold, a chosen family, forged in the fire of shared justice. The corruption's grip loosened with each revelation, but the storm brewed. Crow's moves accelerating, whispers turning to actions that could ensnare the innocent. She texted Elena, "It's bigger than us. Help's coming." As the city slept uneasily, the alliance deepened, pulling toward a dawn where moral light would pierce the shadows, testing loyalties in the crucible of unyielding honor. The road to redemption twisted onward, engines of truth revving in the dark. The first light of dawn crept over the city's jagged horizon, painting the skyline in hues of rose and steel, as if the world itself held its breath for the reckoning. Sophia Reyes stood on the steps of her apartment building, the cool morning air nipping at her skin, carrying the faint scent of dew-kissed pavement and distant bakery ovens firing up. Her scrubs were fresh for the shift ahead, but sleep had been a fleeting visitor, chased away by the weight of Ethan's late-night assurance and the crumpled threat note now tucked away like a defeated shadow. At 35, she'd faced down fevers and fractures without flinching, but this, the unraveling of Mercy General's hidden veins, stirred a deeper tremor, one that blended fear with the quiet thrill of purpose. Her phone remained silent, no further warnings, just the steady hum of the waking city pulling her toward the hospital like an inexorable tide. In the Iron Vipers clubhouse, the warehouse stirred with the low rumble of awakening engines, chrome accents glinting under the hanging bulbs like stars refusing to fade. Ethan Harlan eased himself onto a stool at the central table, his cane leaning against the edge, the wood's grain worn smooth by countless strategy sessions. The pain in his leg had dulled to a persistent echo, overshadowed by the anticipation coiling in his gut. At 42, he'd ridden through sandstorms fiercer than this moral gale, but the oath binding him to Sophia felt personal. A renewal of the promise inked after his brother's fall. Never leave one behind, especially those who extended a hand in the dark. Bear Thorne entered from the back, his footsteps heavy as thunder on the concrete floor, a steaming mug in one massive hand and a printout in the other. The air thickened with the aroma of strong coffee and faint cigar ash, the Brotherhood's ritual fuel for battles waged in shadows. "Package hit the AG's desk at 0400, Bear said, his voice a gravelly anchor, sliding the confirmation email across the table. The screen glowed with official stamps. Anonymous submission received. Preliminary review initiated. No traces back to the Vipers or Sophia, just the dossier's irrefutable weight. Manifests of shorted supplies, billing discrepancies that painted executives like Harlan Crow as architects of quiet neglect, patience charts subtly altered to justify cuts that left vulnerabilities exposed. Ethan's eyes scanned the lines, his fingers drumming a silent rhythm, memories of VA hallways where care evaporated into red tape fueling his resolve. Crow's scrambling, Bear continued, glancing at a burner phone's alerts. Internal memos flying, lawyers on retainer, staff gagged, but the light's on now, can't unshine it. The core riders filtered in, nods exchanged in the dim light, their vests a tapestry of shared scars, ready to shadow without storming. Loyalty, their unyielding engine. Sophia arrived at Mercy General as the sun crested fully, its rays slicing through the lobby's glass facade like blades of judgment. The ER thrummed with early morning urgency, a fender-bender victim with whiplash, the sharp tang of blood and antiseptic mingling in the air, but an undercurrent rippled through the halls, nurses exchanging hushed glances over clipboards. Elena met her at the nurses' station, her face a map of concern etched by years of frontline grit. "Admin's in lockdown mode," she whispered, handing over a fresh stack of charts, the paper crisp under Sophia's fingers. "Crow's called an all-hands, something about external audits. Your biker friends?" Sophia nodded subtly, her pulse steadying like a heartbeat synced to the monitor's beeps. It's moving. Truth, not trouble. As she moved to her station, stabilizing a retiree's irregular rhythm with practiced calm, the weight lifted fractionally. Her compassion, once a solitary flame, now amplified by the viper's quiet vigilance. By noon, the storm broke without a single roar. State investigators arrived in unmarked sedans, their badges flashing like sudden sunlight in the administrative wing. Harlan Crowe stood in his corner office, the panoramic view of the city now a cage of glass and steel. His impeccably tailored suit rumpled from a sleepless night. The air conditioner hummed coldly, carrying the sterile chill of impending exposure. As agents combed files and servers, their questions probing like scalpels into the rot. No dramatic arrests, just the methodical peel of layers. Offshore transfers uncovered, supplier kickbacks traced to family ties, patient outcomes linked to skimped resources in ways that suggested overlooked risks rather than overt harm. Crowe's protests echoed down the corridors, but the facade cracked. Memos surfacing that bound him to the greed's core. Down in the ER, word spread like wildfire through shift whispers. Supplies restocked overnight. Billing holds slapped on inflated claims. A tentative exhale among the staff. Ethan received the update mid-afternoon, parked on a borrowed bike at the city's green edge. The park's oaks rustling in a gentle breeze that carried the river's earthy whisper. His phone buzzed with Bear's text. AG's moving fast. Crowe suspended pending review. Oath delivered. He exhaled, the tension uncoiling like a chain released, the sun warming his leather jacket as he pictured Sophia's face. Steady hands in the rain, now free from the system's grind. The Vipers had ridden the periphery, scouts confirming the investigators' paths without interference. Their presence a ghost shield, ensuring no retaliation touched her. At 42, Ethan felt the scars of old losses mend a thread. The Brotherhood's family chosen extending to this nurse who'd unknowingly invoked their code. He texted her. It's breaking their way. You held the line. Sophia read it during a break on the loading dock, the concrete still holding the morning's dew. Trucks idling with full crates for the first time in months. Relief flooded her, warm as sunlight on her skin, mingled with a profound gratitude that bridged her solitary world to theirs. Elena joined her, leaning against the railing, the two women sharing a quiet nod amid the dock's mechanical hum. Whatever you did, or whoever, it's shifting, Elena said, her voice laced with awe. Sophia smiled faintly, the envelope's memory a talisman in her mind. Kindness circles back, sometimes on two wheels. As the shift wound down, the hospital felt lighter, halls echoing with tentative hope, promises of audits, reforms whispered in boardrooms, the moral justice she'd fought for blooming without a drop of blood. Evening fell with a golden hush over the Viper's lot, engines cooling in the twilight as the Brotherhood gathered loosely, beers cracked in silent toast. Bear clapped Ethan's shoulder, the gesture heavy with unspoken pride, the air rich with the scent of polished metal and camaraderie forged in fire. She's safe. Rot's exposed. Iron Oath holds. Ethan nodded, his gaze drifting to the horizon where the city lights began to flicker, Sophia's apartment a distant beacon. The road ahead stretched open, scars healed not by time alone, but by alliances born of quiet courage. A nurse's mercy repaid in loyalty, corruption yielding to unyielding honor. In her apartment that night, Sophia stood by the window, the city sprawl unfolding like a map redrawn. The threat note lay in the trash, irrelevant now, replaced by a text from Ethan. Dawn ride tomorrow? Neutral ground. Thanks don't cover it. She replied, yes, the word carrying the weight of chosen bonds. The oath that had pulled them together lingered, a legacy of redemption where family was forged in acts of integrity, justice prevailing through persistence rather than force. As stars emerged overhead, the world felt vast yet connected, promises enduring like the endless highway. Thank you for riding along on this journey of loyalty and quiet strength. If these stories of honor and chosen family resonate with you, Please subscribe for more tales that remind us of the power in unbreakable oaths.